It's email to you. You can, yeah, problems during the session. Thank you, everyone. Sir, please continue. Over to you, sir.
Oh, yeah, fine. No, I was just asking whether yesterday you began this program, is it?
Yes, sir. The program had started yesterday. The first session was from Dr. Varsha Shah, SVNIT Surat. Second session was by Dr. Amit Kumar Gupta, PhD from IIT Bombay. And third session was from MATLAB. This fourth session on day 2 is yours, sir.
Okay, great. Fine, no problem. So shall we start, or you want me to wait for some more time? I think 1 more minute is there for 10.
Yes,
I think,
sir.
right?
I think few participants are still left to join in. If you wish, sir, we can wait for 2 more minutes.
Yeah.
Because right now I can see around 80 participants have joined, and we have around 150 participants. So half of them are still, they are not still joined. I'm already asking them to join.
Okay, we will wait for a minute or so, and then we can.
Sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely. I'll again ask them to join. Sir, I think we can start now.
Okay.
Yeah. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to everybody. I'm Umbanand from the Indian Institute of Science. You are all able to hear me, right? I'm audible, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this session was actually named as electric vehicle session, but I will try to make the title more general, and I will call it electric mobility and ecosystems, because now that is a much broader aspect, topical area, which has a lot of challenges. So this discussion will be in this following sequence. First, initially, let me give a flavor of historical aspect on the electric vehicles, and then followed by, I think there is some background noise. Okay. I think probably everybody can mute their mics.
Sir, I'll mute everyone, then you please unmute your mic first. Just a second.
Okay, then I will have to.
Sir, please unmute your mic and then continue. Yeah.
Okay, it's appearing on your screens?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the first part will be kind of historical.
Sound monster.
Pardon me? Then the following second part will be ability, and then we will look at what are the various other aspects that integrate into the electric vehicle scenario. And then we will look at the various challenges that are present in this area. So this is how we will proceed. You can interrupt me while we are going along to ask doubts. Only thing is that because my screen is full screen, I will not be able to see your hand. So you will have to probably you will have to probably speak out, then I will stop and then I will explain, because now on my screen I am not seeing anything else except the slide
So
system.
participants can unmute themselves to interrupt sir if they want.
Okay,
As sir
then
said.
I will
Yeah.
stop and then we can proceed on. Okay. Okay. So just to give a brief historical thing, this is of course one of the very early electric vehicles, the Detroit Edison, and this is not the first vehicle, but of course it gradually developed. One of the very early vehicles. But what you probably must know, and probably many of you may know, did you know which came first? Was it the electric vehicle or was it the internal combustion engine? So if you see, the electric vehicle actually came much earlier to the internal combustion engine, came somewhere around 1873, and then probably close to 10, 12 years, a decade later, you see the internal combustion engine actually happened. So initially the race was between EV and ICE. So something actually made the ICE to go much forward, and it actually won the race. And then the internal combustion engine, as you know, history, that everything is based on that. So what is it that won the race for the internal combustion engine? It is the electric motor itself. This is one of the earlier models of the vehicle. I think you may recognize this model. It's not the Ambassador, it's the Landmaster. Before the Ambassador, this Landmaster used to be the one which was very prevalent. But I'm not focused on the model of the vehicle. I am moving the mouse. Are you able to see the mouse? Something here I'm pointing, the mouse here. There is a small hole kind of a thing. Anybody, any guesses what that is?
No, sir. It is actually to start the engine.
Exactly, exactly. So you won't find it in the modern vehicles. So you will see that in almost all the vehicles, you will see that hole there where you put in the crank and then you crank it to start the engine. So it would be there in all the vehicles. Later on, it stopped coming in the newer vehicles. So that is actually now done by an electric motor called the starter motor. So once the starter motor came into being, this electronic ignition became popular, and that in fact was the one which actually won the race. But of course, after the starter motor came in also, they used to have this in parallel, because sometimes the battery is down, you start it with this, something equivalent to a push start, and then crank it and then start the vehicle and go. But now it is not there. But remember that it is the starter motor actually which won the race for the ICE engine. Very ironical. Then later on in the 40s or so, you started having these electric vehicles, wedge-shaped electric vehicles with different structures. They had the solar panel on the roof, and this one. These wedge-shaped structures became popular basically again for aerodynamics. You see, in electric vehicles, you have these main loads. One is the resistance to acceleration, the J d omega by dt, or the m dv by dt. You need to provide enough force to overcome the acceleration. You need to overcome the rolling resistance. The tires, which come in contact with the ground, it's more because of its motion. By virtue of its motion, there will be a friction. It's called the rolling friction or the rolling resistance. It has to overcome that. It has to overcome any gradient forces. And third, important thing, it has to overcome the force of the opposing air when the air resistance. So air resistance is actually it is proportional to square of the velocity in which you are at which you are traveling. So therefore, the air force is quite significant at higher speeds. So these wedge-shaped structures started coming in. So this specifically is a two-seater 6 HP DC motor, which could have a range of around 40 miles at 40 miles per hour. So you see that there are several in Europe also. Several aerodynamic structures started coming into play. These are in that 1950s era. 3 wheels. This is again 3-wheel, a buggy type of model. And you have several buggy type of models. So this is again 3 wheels. This is very similar to our wheel is in the front. And these are all electric vehicles, more aerodynamically shaped. And charging was an issue at that time, and it is also at this time. Charging, we will, as we go forward in our discussion, you will see that charging is going to be quite problematic. So instead of the fuel here, you will have the charges, and then you can have metered charges, all those things. So parking lots, parking spaces, can double as charging stations. Now, let us just have a look at this thing. Where does the energy go? So these numbers were actually taken from measurements. So we have made several electric vehicles. Probably I'll show some demos later, some videos. And the measurement taken for 1 kilometer travel. And the weight of the vehicle is around 800 kgs, 800 to 1000 kgs if you take, including the payload. You will see for 1 kilometer travel, the amount of energy that is consumed, 1 kilometer cruising travel, the amount of energy that is consumed is around 80 watt hours. So for that 80 watt hours, that is what we would say useful energy. Now this 80 watt hours is the one which is actually used for overcoming rolling resistance, overcoming acceleration resistance, overcoming air resistance, overcoming the gradient. All that is being used for this 80 watt hours. Moving a person or moving the payload from point A to point B, 1 kilometer. Now for that, what are the other energy commissions that you need to pay? You need to pay 20 watt hours. So overall, you will see at the input, you will be drawing 615 watt hours. So 615 watt hours for an 80 watt hour output. So in liters of petrol, you can convert it. It will work out too much. So this is basically the energy budget. What happens? This is the energy budget for an internal combustion engine propulsion. So let us see what happens if it is an electric propulsion. So for the electric propulsion, same weight, same payload, 1000 kg, 800 kg vehicle, around 200 kg of payload, 1 kilometer travel. This will not change, 80 watt hours. That will be still the same because the payload is the same, the weight of the vehicle is the same. So to that, the commission given battery charging loss 40 watt hours, transmission 20 watt hours, and that will amount to 144 watt hours. There is regeneration. So when you are using electric propulsion, you can regenerate. See, normally in an ICE vehicle, when you brake, what happens? There are these brake shoes which will go and press against the brake drum. There is friction, and because of the friction, the vehicle comes to a stop. That is an additional force. The vehicle slows down, decelerates, and comes to a stop. And where does the energy which is stored in the inertia of the whole vehicle payload, what happens? It goes off as heat energy through that friction. But in the case of electric propulsion, that energy which is stored in the mass of the vehicle, mass of the payload, can be regenerated back and put into the battery, into the input. So therefore, it is actually not 144. It will be around 140. So this is the kind of difference. So the energy that is drawn from the input can actually be significantly lesser compared to the ICE under same benchmark condition. So you see the price difference. So what would this side calculated at around 60 rupees. So you will see the difference. And at 5 rupees, the unit price of electricity. So quite a significant difference. So worth going in for an electric vehicle, but there are a lot of challenges. It is not so straightforward. It's not so so straightforward as I pointed out in the energy budget. T0 was so somewhere I think this is the Tesla make. Actually, it became quite popular. I think in the late 80s or early 90s when this is the first electric vehicle which was supposed to have raced against an aeroplane on the runway and have made it better than the speeds better than the aeroplane. But that is from the speed point of view. But the point is that this is a lithium-ion based storage. The one which really made an impact on the life of the people was this Honda's Insight and Prius, which actually came into the market and quite popular. And this is the Prius, and you will see that this was something which made an amazing contribution. It came in somewhere around, if I recall, around 2000 or 2001 in that time frame. And even today, the Toyota Prius is there and then being used by many people all over the world. So this is a hybrid. Both these are hybrids. The Toyota Prius, for 2 decades, it had been ruling the hybrid electric vehicle market. One of the very nice vehicles. I will explain the structure, the block diagram structure of that later. Okay. On the Indian side, you would have probably, some of you would have seen this Bijli, quite a popular electric vehicle. It's a 3-wheeler. This actually chassis is from Scooters India, I think, and a DC motor drive and used for mass transport of people. And you have the later versions. Again, the Scooters India. This would mean that there is a reaction force. So use the reaction force and push it up. At this point, you will see that kinetic energy is at half j omega square, and then the loss in the potential energy is converted to the kinetic energy. And when you do an impact braking, you have the reaction, and you can use the reaction to make it stand up. I will get back the potential energy, bringing the kinetic loss. So this way, so you see, you keep moving forward. And that's what we do, right? We all do. We try to fall, and then we stop our falling, and then we rise up, and then keep on moving. So it is a kind of a minimum energy principle, very low amount of energy required to travel from A to B. So it has a lot of other advantages. Multi-terrain. You don't need to have a manufactured pathway. See, in the case of wheeled locomotion, you need to have a road. tarred road or whatever it is, gravel road, you need to make the road. So you need to spend a lot of energy into making the road. As on the nature is this one, it does not need to spend energy in making infrastructure. The vehicle or the legged locomotion object just travels on whichever terrain it is. So it is very applicable to multi-terrain, non-prepared roads. So no road infrastructure is needed. So that energy also you should calculate when you are actually talking of wheeled locomotion. So one of the more popular mechanism, the Janssen mechanism, is a very popular legged locomotion concept. How many of you have heard of Janssen's mechanism? Anybody has seen that? Strand Beast, Janssen's Strand Beast, have you seen? Nobody?
No, sir.
Okay, this is very interesting. If someone is going to do research, it is right now a mechanical beast. It can be converted to an electric beast. So let's say, let me just bring about the concept of that. It's very interesting. I'm just putting on the background a very light horse so that you can relate it. And this is the mechanism. These are the linkages. So you see here, this is the nodal is there on that one. And there is this rod, I'll tell you why. All with the same type of mechanism, only the proportions have been scaled. So this is the strand beast. This is available on YouTube. You should have a look at that. It is very inspiring. Okay, now I will continue. Go to the yeah. Before I continue, probably some videos are in order. I showed you this, right? So this vehicle, I thought probably, yeah, you can see it in motion. It is a 5 kilowatt induction motor. It probably one of the earliest vector controlled induction motor drive has been part here, a small white part there. Now that was the DSP board. So that is a TMS, the earliest DSP board. This is 90, I was telling you this model is 1998, 1999, that kind of this one. Even before the Prius came into the market. So this is a TMS 320F240. So that is this is a series hybrid. I'll tell you what a series hybrid is later. Now I also would like to show you this. Different terrains. Let me show you the next version. So this is the next version. You see that there is a camera there. So this can work on its own, and it can also sense obstructions and see what's happening, and you can also direct it. So this is a stair climbing. This stair climbing, in fact, it was also supposed to not only be all terrain, also be able to climb stairs. That was the. Then it comes down, and so all by itself. So this is basically one aspect of non-wheeled, very, very useful. So when you guys are doing research, that by the students, so where it is in between, and the scope waveform, so that he can take the waveforms as it is moving, and he has a remote control to control the speed and direction of motion. This is very similar to your differential drive robot, that kind of a thing, where the differential is basically those two motors itself, or operating at different speeds can give you the turning angle, turning radius. This is a rim. The rims are the spokes are all made of wood. So we bought these wooden strips and then cut it to shape. And there is some rubber for the foots. There's the rubber anchors for reducing the impact. Okay, so that is some videos for you. I will close this presentation. I will open another. Now this is something else. Now at this point, let me ask, are there any questions before I go forward? Does anybody have questions till now?
No, sir.
Okay, let me go forward. If you have questions anytime, note it down so that we can take it later also, no problem. So what I want to actually bring out in this slide, you have various energy sources. So on the left column and on the right column, you have energy density, watt hour per kg. Per kg of this energy source, how much watt hours you get. Look at these. Gasoline, 12,300 watt hours per kg. Natural gas, 9,350 watt hours per kg. Methanol, around 250 or so, slightly lesser than 300, but around 250 to 300. Flywheel, 15. So you see the fossil fuel based. These are the fossil gasoline, natural gas, coal. They're all fossil fuel based, which are hovering around 10,000 watt hours per kg. Roughly, as a thumb rule, you can keep it in your mind. So anything is coming from under the ground, whether it is petrol, diesel, coal, they are all of that order, 10,000 watt hours per kg. Compare that with lead acid battery, 35 watt hour per kg, and the best battery, which is around 200 to 250 watt hours per kg. So the 1 kg, if I take it in my pocket, the petrol will gives you phenomenal range, whereas all these batteries will give you a very short range. This is one important thing that you need to keep in mind. Looking at that hydrogen, 28,000 is the one which actually pushed the fuel cell concept, right, which uses hydrogen for making the energy. But one thing you have to keep in mind is that if you are carrying hydrogen, even though it's low. So let us do some comparison. On one side, you have the EV. On this side, left side, you have the electric vehicle. Okay. Imagine that. On the right side, you have the internal combustion engine vehicle. And in between, you have the hybrids, hybrid electric vehicle, in between all two. Okay, so at this point in time, at this on the left side, if you say the efficiency of the vehicle is 70%. So let me take the efficiency of the inverter power drive is around 98%, and then the efficiency of the machine 90+%. So, and the battery charging efficiency. Now that is where it will come down. So that is why I'm saying overall, all this, if you multiply, let us say conservatively, 70% is the efficiency you can get from the input to the electric vehicle to the wheels. On the ICE side, from the input, from the point that petrol has been filled into the tank to the wheels, you have around 15%, and you have higher efficiency ICE vehicles also. It can go up to 24% probably today's vehicles. So this is basically the thing. You have efficiency on EV side high and the ICE side low. This is the wheel onboard efficiency. And if you take the storage, which is there, what is the energy source? The energy source, if you take batteries, it is pretty low on the EV side. The lowest would be the lead acid battery, which is having 35 watt hour per kg, or lithium polymers, lithium ion, which are having much better, probably around 250 to 300 watt hours per kg. But still much lower compared to the right side ICE side, which is having the order of 10,000 watt hours per kg. It's quite high. So specific energy or watt hour per kg, that is another parameter that you can see. Because this is going to increase your onboard weight, right? So if I am carrying the battery, the whole payload itself can become very significant. And you have to drag the battery along. So you have to use energy to drag the battery along also. So therefore, that is going to bring down, there's going to be a break even. So you will see that on one side, efficiency is low. On the ICE side, you have a much better energy, specific energy. On the EV side, you have better efficiency, but you lose out on the specific energy of the storage source. Storage or the source. So somewhere in between, you can have a kind of an optimal. If you take the energy density into efficiency product. So somewhere in between, you can have the optimal compromise, and that could be the percentage. And then probably as and when the battery technology improves, you can start moving towards the EV side more and more until you become fully an electric vehicle, or you will reach an equilibrium where you may have to use a portion of the fossil fuel and a portion of the electric to actually balance out in the long run. Remember that when you are talking of this energy, you have to actually talk of the entire energy chain. from the point which, that if I take petrol, you the amount of energy that you use to extract the energy of the petrol from the ground up, and then you transport it to the various petrol stations, and from the petrol station it gets into the vehicle. So the energy chain for even from the generation point to the point of reaching the vehicle is important. In the case of the electric also it is so. Is it renewable or is it non-renewable? In a country like ours, you should know that majority of the electric is coming from, any guesses, anybody? Which is the major source of electricity for our country? There is our
Thermal, sir. Thermal, sir. From thermal.
and the thermal is coming from where? Coal. And coal is coming from again from under the ground, fossil fuel. It is also fossil fuel. So you see that it is fossil fuel which is driving your electric vehicle finally. So if you take this route, what happens? So you have to take coal from so you have to spend energy to take coal from, mine the coal, transport it to the thermal station, and then you will have to burn that coal to generate the steam turbines in the boilers, and that steam turbine is the one which is actually going to generate the electricity. So the boilers are going to have an efficiency. It's going to have an efficiency less than 40. So then this electricity that is generated needs to be transmitted to the point where it charges the vehicle at the point of reception, last mile. So the transmission losses in the country are around 28% electrical. So if you take that route of coal, thermal, electricity, transmission loss, and this, you will see the electric vehicle is much less efficient than the ICE engine. ICE engine, you take the petrol out of the ground and then you bring it to the station and it is into your vehicle. So if you take the entire energy cycle, that 70% here gets multiplied by boiler efficiency, 28% of transmission efficiency, and then you are to the extraction of the coal. All this will bring it to around 10%. So are you really gaining by going in for electric? So you have to think about that. So which means that the primary source from where you charge your battery itself is very, very important. So keep this in mind when you are actually doing your electric mobility solutions. So up to this point, any doubts? So this is a very, very important point, because when you talk of charging the battery, people are working on a lot of fast chargers and all those things. Are you using thermal energy for as your electric source, or are you using renewable energy for your electric source? That is very, very important. If you don't use the proper electric energy, then you would have actually spoiled the environment more than not using the electric vehicle. Is that clear? Any doubts up to this point? Okay, let me go forward. Yeah.
That means according to the discussion, we should go for hybrid electrical vehicle, and for electrical car, we should use renewable energy. That would have good, better impact as well as better utilization.
Pardon me, the voice was a bit low. Your voice was low.
From the discussion, it means that instead of pure EV, we should go for hybrid EV, and that too for charging battery, we should go for renewable.
Exactly. For charging battery, you should use renewable sources like photovoltaics, wind, hydroelectric. These are the ones which are renewable, and then you should use that for charging the battery. There is no point in taking it from the thermal grid and then charging the battery, because you would have wasted a lot on the way. And hybrid electric right now is a very ideal, actually the ideal bridge technology, because you are actually using the best of both. And see, EV, you need to develop the infrastructure. You need to have charging stations, and even if you have charging stations, you need to wait there for half an hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hours for the batteries to get charged. So if it is a kind of a optimal mix between the two, so what you would do right now, you are getting mileages. What is the mileage you normally get in the vehicle? Around 20 kilometers to a liter you get, probably,
Yes, sir.
isn't it? So 20. Now, can I push it to 50 kilometers to a liter? Now that itself is a fantastic. If I use this hybrid and push it to 50 kilometers to a liter, and probably much better. Now I push it to 100 kilometers to a liter. So if I keep doing that, that is a much better way of tackling, because now in an emergency case, when my battery is down, I don't have to wait for half an hour or 1 hour. This one, I still have the other fuel, the petrol fuel, which will take me to the destination. Maybe an emergency. Maybe you have to take someone to a hospital. Many things, many such things. So hybrid that way has that kind of an advantage. I personally feel we should go the hybrid way, but anyway, the regulations and government regulations are coming that you have to go the EV way. But I think we have to take a kind of a moderate stance between the two. Don't really totally reject ICE engine. Don't totally reject the EV. So one of between these two only you see a best point, an optimal point. Is that clear?
Second point is, sir, it is fine that we should go for the renewables.
Yeah.
But in most of the cases, standalone kind of renewables are not that fruitful. So again, it is to somehow grid only. So if we
See, grid means then see if the national grid is taking less from thermal, yes. See, for example, you have several of the countries where 98% is only hydroelectric. Then yes, if a majority of your main grid itself is hydroelectric, you can go and plug in anywhere, no problem. It's already renewable. So, but if it is thermal, then if you take the overall energy efficiency right from the generation to coming to your vehicle, then it will definitely be less efficient. Yes, when you say emergency, you can plug it in there and then take it. Become a habit. So that is where the problem comes. We tend to the design should not be based on self-discipline. If the design, if a design of a vehicle or design of a product is based on its working is based on the discipline of the person, then it becomes difficult to design. You can't enforce everybody to go and plug onto the renewable grid, right? So many people will not want to do that. So then it fails in its primary objective. Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, isn't in future, as per the last decade, the penetration of the renewables are growing? It would not be the case that in some 1 or 2 or 3 decades, that share of this renewable will be major, and the fossil fuel problem that could arise in pure EV would be eliminated.
Definitely, you are right. That see, now people are putting more and more, people are becoming more aware of renewable. More and more renewables are getting onto the rooftops, and you will see that parking lots on top you can put a lot of PVs. You can hydroelectric power also is increasing parallelly. Wind energy is increasing. So all these are now definitely increasing the percentage utilization of the renewable as compared to the thermal. What was before? Before it was 75–80% was. Now you see that the renewable part is increasing. The PV part especially is increasing at a rapid rate. So as you say, probably in a decade or so, you will see a major shift. You could see that the renewable has become dominant. So in that case, yes, what you say is right. We can plug it onto the regular grid once that becomes a dominant kind of energy source. Clear, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let us probably move forward and see what are the different topologies, what are the different types of topologies that one can have in the electric vehicle. Now that's where now we are gradually shifting into the block diagrams into what kind of power electronics or electronics that may come about. So let us see that. So here is a block diagram. So here is a block diagram. What is it? This is the block diagram of a normal internal combustion system that exists in a vehicle. So this is an ICE. So this is an internal combustion engine. Forget about this coupled shaft and the generator. I just put it for the next stage. You just take petrol. Petrol is driving this internal combustion engine, which is able to rotate the shaft, and then that is coupled to a gearbox. GB is a gearbox and a differential system, and from there the energy is going into the transmission. It could be a differential, rear wheel or front wheel, and into the wheels. Okay, so this is our typical internal combustion engine power flow. Energy. Petrol internal combustion engine goes up there into the gearbox, then into the differential and out into the wheels, right? Now look at a parallel hybrid. So in the parallel hybrid, at the wheels, I want another person to push. So the ICE coupled to the gearbox, differential, pushing the wheels. That was one fellow doing the job. Another actuator, another prime mover is an induction motor. So I'll connect the induction motor to the shaft at the differential point. And this induction driven, it is driven from an inverter battery. So this is a combination. So you see one input petrol coming into the internal combustion engine coupled to the gearbox, the power is flowing, and then here you have a torque addition. So you have battery is powering up the induction motor through an inverter drive, and the induction motor going to the torque adder. So it is like two persons pushing the vehicle. So these two persons are pushing the vehicle wheels. So this is parallel. So two persons in parallel are pushing the vehicle. The parallel hybrid. So let me just expand that. So I will put the battery a bit downstream, and then you have an interface electronic. Yeah. So we have this T power port. So what is basically does is that here you have three power ports. One is electricity, that is one power port. You have the battery, that is another power port, and then the inverter, which is the third power port in this case. So you could have electricity from the grid, from whichever socket point you want to take, that can power up the battery. Now from the battery, you can have the power flow through the multi-power port, and it can go into the inverter, into the induction motor, back and into the wheels. Another possibility, you can also, when you brake, there is a lot of inertial energy on the vehicle. It has a fantastic mass. It has 1000 kg, let us say. and it is moving at some speed. So the kinetic energy half mv square is amount of energy is there. So you suddenly break it or you break it. That amount of kinetic energy will get normally converted to heat, friction, heat, and that is lost. But you can recover it back if you have this kind of hybrid. So you pass it back to the induction motor, which will now act as an induction generator, goes through the inverter, and through this multi-power board, it will come and charge up this battery. And you can recover that portion of the energy which was there in the inertia of the vehicle. So that is the important aspect, energy recovery, which is not there in the normal petrol driven vehicles, which is possible here. So regeneration, we call it. So this is parallel hybrid with regeneration possibility. Okay, so you see the difference now. You see that I am removing this shaft. So from the ICE engine, the direct shaft which is connecting to the torque adder is removed. I will remove that. Instead, the ICE engine shaft is connected, coupled to a generator. So the generator is going to generate electric output. The electric output, let us say if it is AC, it's an alternator, you rectify it. And then you place it in this fashion. So this becomes a series hybrid. So which means that only one guy is pushing the wheels, which is the induction motor. But the induction motor itself can take power, energy from different energy sources. So it can take from the petrol ICE engine, that is one possible source. It can take from the battery, the other possible source. And it could take from the battery, which is actually taking from the electricity. So multiple sources are there. But as far as pushing the vehicle is concerned, it is one single fellow which is pushing the vehicle, which is the induction motor. So the entire torque has to come from the induction machine. Whereas in the earlier case, the entire torque is not coming from the induction motor. Part of the torque is coming from this direct connection of the ICE engine to the through the GB gearbox, and remaining part of the torque is coming from the induction motor to the torque adder. So if they are equally rated, if the ICE engine, let us say you have totally 10 kilowatts, let's say you rate this as 5 kilowatts and you rate the ICE engine as 5 kilowatts, then you have half the torque coming from here and the half the torque coming from the induction machine. So you can rate the machines half and half. But in the induction, in the series hybrid, this motor has to handle the entire power. So it has to be, now the vehicle will be a 5 kilowatt vehicle, not a 10 kilowatt vehicle. And this induction machine can take part power from ICE engine. ICE engine can still be a rating and the battery can be half the rating. And then this part of the block diagrams can be half the rating compared to this. Inverter has to be the full rating. Induction motor has to be the full rating. So like this. So this is a hybrid concept. Series hybrid. So that vehicle which I showed that we made, the three-wheeler vehicle, was a series hybrid. This was the topology that was used inside that vehicle. So both I will use series and parallel. So which means that I can shift between series, parallel, combination in a very smooth manner. And this is called the combination hybrid. So this is exactly what is inside the Prius. The Toyota Prius is a combination hybrid. And their nice important component is this. The ICE shaft has a generator and you have the gearbox. Now this is a very nice combination which Prius uses as a sun and planetary gear system. It is their patented technology, and that is where a lot of their innovative USP is about. Okay, where you also have torque sharing at the wheels. You also have power sharing at the electrical side. So you can see that you can have several directions of power flow here. You see, petrol, the power can flow from the ICE engine. It can go through this generator, gets converted to electrical, rectify, charge the battery. The battery can also be charged from electricity. You can plug into the grid, go through this and charge the battery. You can also charge the battery, you brake the vehicle, then you have power regeneration, induction motor acting as a generator, inverter acting as a converter, goes through the multi-power port and charge the battery. The battery can be charged in different ways. Then you can have from the battery power flow through the inverter, induction motor, and go to the transmission. This can happen, let us say the petrol is over, tank is empty. So this portion won't come into the picture. So this will charge, push the vehicle on its own. So then it becomes an electric vehicle. So battery, inverter, induction motor to the transmission just becomes an electric vehicle. Or it can just be an ICE. The battery is over, dead. So you can go ICE, gearbox directly, acts like a normal ICE engine. So, and then a combination of these two can have power sharing. So that is the beauty of this Prius, and I like that concept. It is really nice. Now I will, okay, let me ask the question. Up to this point, any doubts?
Yes, sir. One doubt is there, sir,
Tell
from my
me.
side. Sir, we are using a battery here, like 72-volt battery, and
Yes.
while braking, the energy is fed back to the battery, as you said.
Yes.
Shall we use the same battery for that also, or we have to use separate battery for storing that kinetic energy?
Same battery. When the power is flowing back into the battery to charge, the power is not flowing out, right? So
frequently we are using the brake means, then whether the battery dynamics will support us or not, sir?
yes, batteries are much faster, much faster than actually your ICE generator system. ICE gen system or mechanical systems, they have much slower dynamics. The induction motor, inverter, battery portion is the ones which are fast dynamics. Any fast changes should be made to be absorbed by this electrical portion of your. So any number of braking, any frequent braking, no problem. Your induction motor inverter combination is much faster than your mechanical braking or unbraking. So braking or acceleration. So the battery will be able to handle it much faster than your ICE engine.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. So I will now talk of this. Remember this block diagram. Remember this block diagram. I will visit in a slightly different way. We try to implement this block diagram in a kind of a retrofit concept. So what I thought of is, let us take a existing vehicle and retrofit this block diagram into it. So what we did was took a Maruti van. So at that time, this again was, I am talking of 2008 or so, that time. Maruti van was very popular, so we took the Maruti van. So that has this ICE gearbox and the wheels. It is a front wheel drive. The back wheel is available for playing around with. It has a differential, so we can attach other sources there. So that is why we chose this Maruti van, and we try to execute all these blocks. So let me just remember this block, and let me just explain now with the concept of retrofitting to existing vehicle. So this is the typical vehicle, ICE vehicle that we have, let us say. So you have the ICE engine here. The ICE engine is coupled to the shaft, and this is the differential, and then goes to the vehicle. So this is typical what happens, right? So now let me put here. At that point, I am let me introduce a belt drive mechanism. It should belt has slippage, so it's not the efficient way, but nice to understand the concept. So I will put this belt drive mechanism like a pulley. Okay, belt and pulley mechanism, and we connect an induction motor in this fashion, and you have a DCAC, this is an inverter, the multi-power port, and then the battery. So typically same block diagram that we are trying to fit it to the vehicle. This is the ICE engine. On this side, normally the ICE engine shaft is connected to fans or through another belt drive mechanism through an alternator. Okay, typically that is what is done in a regular vehicle. Right. So if I want to use it as an electric vehicle, engine in its gearbox, there's a gearbox here in neutral. So we keep it in neutral, and then you could use this battery in multi-power port, inverter, induction motor through this pulley mechanism, and then go to the differential and drive the wheel. So it becomes an electric vehicle. Or let us say the battery is not there, I can disable this drive to the induction machine, and the shaft will just free wheel rotate, and the ICE engine can drive in, you can put it in gear and then drive this different. It can be a pure ICE engine. So you have a way where you can have this parallel hybrid concept possible. Now I will say here on the other side of the shaft, which is normally connected to an alternator, and that alternator is rectified and connected to a battery for charging the battery. Normal, typically in every vehicle you will have this. The ICE engine shaft is connected to an alternator, and that is rectified and charges the battery. So when you are running your vehicle, your battery is getting charged. What you call the onboard battery that you are having for doing all the other works for lighting, dashboard, and all those things, right? The regular housekeeping job that the battery is doing. So the housekeeping battery gets charged in this way in all the regular vehicles. ICE shaft, alternator, DC-DC, and the battery. Now let us increase that in power to match the power of the induction motor and the propulsion system. So we increase the alternator and the DC-DC converter, and then what happens is there's a possibility to charge the alternator battery. Now let us say I have disabled this drive. So when I disable this drive, induction motor is freewheeling, it is not driving. So ICE engine is driving this vehicle and is also parallelly charging the battery. Now let us say the battery is charged. Then I will enable the induction motor drive by giving the appropriate PWM pulses. So the induction motor is also pushing, ICE is also pushing. Now it becomes a parallel hybrid. Now what I do, I put this gearbox in neutral. So ICE engine is not driving it, but ICE engine is still operating. It is firing, and the shaft is rotating. It is through the alternator powering up the battery, and from the battery it is going through the inverter, induction motor, and driving this. So it becomes a series hybrid. ICE engine, battery, induction motor, all in series driving the vehicle. So you have a series hybrid. So you see this possibility. You have a series hybrid, you have a parallel hybrid, you have a combination. So that is the structure that we use, and we try to build it, incorporate it into the van. Of course, it operated successfully, but it was not what you call production worthy because it was a student project. But anyway, I will show you the picture. So, this is the flow for a pure electric vehicle. This is the flow for a parallel HEV, and this is the flow for a series, and then the combination. Now let us take this van. So van has, this is the chassis level. This is the base level where above that you have the seat, the yellow one. Okay, platform, backside platform. We removed the backside seat, and on that we mounted the motor. So it's a 5 kilowatt machine. And then we made a hole through the platform and passed it, used the belt drive mechanism to the shaft. Okay, so you had a ratio here, and then the ratio in the differential differential ratio is around 4 or so, depends upon vehicle to vehicle, and then this ratio we kept it around 3 to 4. Overall, we got a ratio of 12 from the motor shaft to the wheels. So the wheel shaft, this way here from here it is coming from the gearbox IC engine. Okay, so that is how they imagine it. So this pulley here, you have the motor which is connected to this, and this is the shaft to which the differential is connected, to which the wheels are connected. And here is a tension pulley, which tries to adjust the tension of the belt. So this is the vehicle. You see here, the back side, the seats are removed. Wiring is messy. Of course, it is a student project. So this is the inverter. And yeah, the inverter is here, and this is the multi-power port. The multi-power port, MPP, which is charging the battery. Batteries are in these wooden boxes, and you have the inverter here driving this machine motor. And this machine, you see this belt going down, and there is this tension pulley. Probably I can show here. Yeah, the motor. There is. Pardon me. Yes. Okay. So here, this box you see is the TMS 320F2407 processor. The time 2407 was the one which was the latest in release. So we used that one. Of course, now you have the 28X series, which are more popular. This is the inverter. So this was the vehicle which we tried and tested as a retrofit van, as we call it, Maruti van. Okay. Okay, so now I will move on to another segment. Any doubts up to this point?
Sir, Kumaran sir, you can hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear.
Sir, that alternator which was there, na sir, in that
Yes.
block diagram you have shown, so that was a single phase alternator, na sir? Or
No, it's a 3-phase.
It's a 3-phase alternator.
3-phase alternator. You have a 3-phase rectifier if you have charging battery.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
So now I will continue on to raise, and now I will move on to challenges. There are several unsolved problems, so I don't have solution for everything, but I want to raise these challenges. And this is where a lot of work will be done. See, I presented the history, and the second part was what was done. Series parallel hybrid combination, what is done, and then what is proven. Technology is proven. But this segment, what I am going to tell, several aspects are not clear in the sense that how it will finally get realized into a commercial kind of a concept. So there are some technologies which are there, but not, maybe at lab level, but not come to the field level. So these are the points that I want to make. So it will probably trigger your minds, and then maybe you may come out with better inventions along these lines. So I'm continuing in that kind of mode. So let me bring out that block diagram. So the block diagram is slightly different. You recall, just keep recalling that traditional block diagram which I showed, series, parallel, hybrid, and combination, like the priors. Now let us say I just put a newer thing, a fuel cell stack, which is there, which is going through a DC-DC converter to generate a DC link. Now that DC link can be made of the E-battery. What I'm calling E-battery is the ultra capacitors and the super capacitors. Now they are also very new components where you can store quite a large amount of energy into the capacitors. But again, the super capacitors have challenges in the sense that their voltage is very low. So which means you need to connect them in series, and connecting capacitors in series is not always a very easy job. Then you have the inverter, and let me go further. You have the induction motor and then the wheel. So this you are familiar. The inverter, induction motor, wheel, no problem. Now, at this point, the DC link point, I will introduce this multi-power port. Now, the multi-power does slightly more work than was indicated in the previous slides. So you have the battery connected to the multi. This is typical. Till this point, we know what is. And instead of fuel cell, you had a ICE engine and a alternator coming into the picture. So let us now add. The first aspect is first challenge is I need to connect several batteries of different makes and different types. So probably I could have a lead acid battery connected to this multi-power port. I could have a lithium polymer battery connected to this port. So when you are stuck in an emergency, when you want, you should be able to pick any battery, connect to this multi-power, you should be moving. So you should not say, oh, this make of the battery, this particular brand of the battery, this particular terminal connection is not available. I would have to wait, I have to order and wait for 1 month. You are stuck on the road. So your design should be such that I should be able to connect any given battery into the system, plug it in, and it should be plug and play, plug it in, and then you keep moving. So this could be a lead acid battery or a lithium polymer battery. So you take combinations of the batteries connection to the system. Now that is a challenge. Okay. Then PV interface. This has to start coming in now more and more. You see in stations, rooftop PV will come in. So PV interface to the multi-power port to charge the batteries should start coming in. Now grid interface. So the grid interface, slight difference. You want to charge the battery, therefore you need a grid interface converter coming from the mains. But I have shown them as bidirectional arrows. What does it mean? You see that the mains is normally supposed to charge this grid and put energy into this. Why should I have a bidirectional array? Why should the battery start putting energy into the mains? Any guesses?
To support the grid during the grid requirements, say reactive power, active power support.
Yes. See, now this scenario will come. This is a very, very critical scenario. Understand this. This is something that is going to come. If I am having one electric vehicle or two electric vehicle on the road, there is no problem. But let us say you are having 100 million electric vehicles on the road, then grid is going to face a serious problem. Let us say if you take the human practice, you are going to come home in the evening and put it to charge. So all of you guys are going to come home and all the 100 million vehicles are going to plug into the grid, and suddenly you will see the fantastic fast dynamic load coming onto the mains. What will the mains do? Mains will become unstable because it has to also deliver our regular thing. For that itself, there is power cut. Plus there is this new kind of loading beast which is now coming onto the grid. So what becomes essential is there should be some kind of an automatic interface here to also automatically stabilize the mains. So if mains is there, power flow should not be into this always. There should also be that bidirectional mechanism. Why? See, you have this sine wave. So when I am having the sine wave, if the voltage and current are in phase, what does it mean?
Unity power factor.
Yeah, unity power factor, it means the resistive. So the power is flowing from now if the current is going out of the mains into this battery, then it is the entire power is going into the battery. Now let us say that the current that is flowing out of the mains into the battery is 90 degrees out of phase. What does it mean?
Inductive load, sir.
It means that there is a power factor 90 degrees. So therefore, you will see that there is no power which is actually useful power, which is actually going to charge the battery. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Whatever power that I am going to put in the first half cycle is removed in the immediate following half cycle, comes back here, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So the power that I am putting and power that I am taking out becomes equal, and there is no charging of the battery and no discharging of the battery. If I take the battery is not having any leakage, let us say efficiency and all is 100% for the moment for the argument, then it means that battery is not discharging also, battery is not charging also. So there should be something which there is no, you have gone and plugged in your electric vehicle. I have also gone and plugged in my electric vehicle, 100 million vehicle to the grid. So a smart grid interface should be there, which detects the charge of the battery level. So let us say my vehicle is, my battery is charged. So then it's not that I just remove out my electric vehicle battery out of this one. It is still connected to the grid. So the grid should intelligently now use, now this fellow is charged, let me buffer the grid. So for 10 milliseconds, it takes out the takes out power from this 5 milliseconds. It takes out the power out of the battery, and then immediately next 5 milliseconds it charges up the battery. Effectively, the battery is neither charged or discharged. I have taken a loan of power from this battery to stabilize the grid and then given it back. So even all these battery systems which are connected to the 100 million battery systems which are connected to the grid, they should intelligently act. This is called buffering of the grid, which will actually stabilize the grid. So this is a phenomena that has to happen if you have to connect 100 million batteries to the grid. Otherwise, the grid will go unstable, and this charging is not a possible scenario. Okay, so this is something that you need to take care, and this is a challenge. This has not been solved effectively, but it is coming. It will come. Okay. So here I have two pictures. One, the picture of traction drive. So here you see, what is this? This is an inverter. This portion, I'm talking of this portion, the inverter portion. Just want to show you, this is the latest inverter that we have developed. There's one version later than this, probably I'll show you in a video later. So you see that this board is a 4-layered board, it's a DSP board. See the DSP here, okay? And these are gate drives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gate drives are here. Top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. This is a 3-phase inverter. Just underneath this is the IGBT module. So you have 6 IGBT modules just underneath this. And what else? You see there's a pipe here and an exit pipe. So water is pumped through this pipe. It goes into the heat sink underneath the IGBT, then comes back out through this pipe. Okay. So you will see it here in this. So you see that we have used a car radiator. This is an Alto car's radiator. We bought an Alto car's radiator. We filled it up with the radiation fluid, radiator fluid, and goes through this pipe, goes in underneath, and then this is having the IGBT, which is there. It is mounted on a heat sink and goes through this, comes out, and then keeps circulating through this radiator. So this is a water-cooled inverter. The reason is that you look at this, it is a 300 amps current. So huge current, and you see on this the typical waveform of a vector control drive. This is a typical speed waveform of a vector control drive to show that what is the algorithm that is put inside is a vector control algorithm. So 700 volts DC link, 300 amps, and even if you take 98% efficiency, that 2% can be quite a lot of power. It's a 2 kilowatt. It's like a 2 kilowatt geyser. You see, so that that it's also the overall this inverter can handle close to 250 kilowatts, 250 to 300 kilowatts of power. This inverter can handle. So if I say 1% of it is 3 kilowatt, 2% is a 98% efficient means 6 kilowatts. 6 kilowatts is something like 3 geysers. So that can the heat sink can become pretty hot, and this is so small tabletop. So you have to remove that heat through a radiator. Comes in there.
Yes, sir.
You get the feel for it, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this is now mounted on that tabby which I showed. So this is the old one, and then where you see the wattage was lesser, 5 kilowatts. Now this inverter is close to 300. It can drive a lorry or a bus also. So I wanted to bring your attention to this motor part. See, the motor is a special design. So this is where you need to also do some research. The induction motor is what we prefer. See, you have the induction motor and you have the gearbox, almost same side as the motor. The reason why we prefer induction motor is that it does not have permanent magnets. And induction motor can be repaired, maintained by several people in the country. There is no dearth for that. Permanent magnet is a problem in the sense that we don't have permanent magnet resources, natural resources to get permanent. In fact, majority of the resources are concentrated in probably one country, and 98 to 99% of that is controlled by one country. And therefore, if you base something, if you base the entire transportation system of the country on permanent magnets, then you can be held to ransom. So very important. My choice would be either an induction machine or a synchronous reluctance machine or a synchronous switched reluctance machine. One of these would be a good way to handle the prime mover problem. So these were coming to the electronics. I wanted to show that this is a previous version DSP board. So what is used here is the 2407, I said, and what was used in that 300 kilowatt inverter is the 28X. So there is a parallel retrofit models you have to probably see, and then you have to interact with the industries because a lot of the wheel spec will come from the industries. Tata Motors is pretty forward in trying to interact with the academics. So you can really go ahead and try to interact with some of these industries. Okay, in this present platform, I will show some videos on this later. This is the motor, but somehow we are not happy with this motor. We are now another motor to fit into that slot there. Okay, let me kind of bring about the several research challenges. You would have seen that it is all in different disciplines. So I thought, let me collate them into different disciplines and then propose to you different challenges in each of these disciplines. So if I take EV, you can see it having a propulsion, a line. Propulsion itself is expertise, recharge solutions and expertise, security solutions, control algorithms, body mechanics. These are all set of expertise. Communication is a big thing in EV, safety solutions, IoT systems, storage. So these are all several things that are coming, which are kind of hitting you at the e-mobility aspect. So it is not just only making the vehicle drive, take it for a round, and then that's it. You have to build an entire ecosystem for it to come onto the road. Okay. So let me say now in the propulsion, I put this in green in the sense that reasonably mature this area, because people have been working on it for quite some time, and you will see that propulsion, even Toyota Prius, has come to the commercial levels. So you have the pure electric series, hybrid, parallel hybrid combination, retrofit. Now this retrofit can be something that you can really work on, because you can't just suddenly put 100 million cars onto the road. What will happen to the 100 million cars which were ICE engine cars which are already on the road? Where will you store them? Where is the real estate to store them? That is a major problem. So retrofit is a way that can smoothly translate to. So I will say retrofit was one challenge. Drive control is another challenge, and special machine design without permanent magnets is another challenge. So this is something that needs to happen. So if I say impact, physical archival problem is an impact. That is where retrofit topologies can help. If you have everything converted to electric. High performance drive robustness is a drive control impact, meaning you are traveling and suddenly something goes bad, your motor goes bad or your drive goes bad. Today, all the propulsion systems are coupled. The drive and the motor is coupled. Anything goes bad, the entire thing has to be rejected, and you have to put another new one, both drive and the motor, which can be really expensive. And for our Indian condition, that will not work. So if let us say the motor goes bad, one should be able to take that motor, another motor. The drive should auto regulate and find out its parameters for the new motor, and then start up and keep running. So that is drive robustness. Or if the drive goes bad, you throw that drive, put another drive, but the same motor is the same motor. The drive, the new drive should adapt to the motor. So this drive and motor adaptation should be happening on the fly. You should not be sitting and tuning there every time. And move away from brushless means I'm saying move away from permanent motors with permanent magnets. That is the takeaway from this particular area. Now, if you take recharge solutions, a recharge solution is something that people have to work on. This is still nascent. Lot of work needs to be done. Vehicle to grid. Now, V2G is an important area of research. Fast charging. People are working on fast charging, but fast charging where? What about the grid? Are you taking from thermal or are you taking from renewable? Can you hybridize this? Okay, that is one area which people have to focus on. No proper solutions have emerged. Grid stabilization is also something which has still not happened. Of course, in the lab level, people are doing, we are doing, and it's happening, but still, what do you know, still in the research stage. Nice solution has to come. Battery swap. Do we go with battery charging solution or battery swap and then slow charging solution? Battery swap meaning just like you have your gas cylinders at home, someone comes and then replaces the cylinder, takes it away. You don't own the cylinder, LPG cylinder. Just like that, just like for the cooking, we don't own the LPG cylinder. Can that model work here also? The owner of the vehicle should not own the battery. The battery, once it is over, you swap it. But then there are a lot of problems in the sense that what is the quality of the battery? What battery am I getting? Am I charged according to the depth of discharge, meaning how many charge discharge cycles have happened? I may have bought a new battery the first time. So the second, when I'm giving and taking another battery, it would have undergone 100 charge discharge cycles. So my tariff should accordingly be modulated. So these are things that automatically, and I should not be sitting there bargaining for the battery. So this thing should happen, the battery swap technique or the model. On the move charge, like toll roads, you can charge the vehicle by paying a toll at a particular toll roads, and you have the inductive charging happening as you are moving. So these are some challenges: battery swap, fast charging, grid stabilization, and wireless charging, inductive charging. So millions of vehicles with millions of buffers, that is for your grid stabilization thing. Long queue problem can be avoided with battery swap, and toll road charging or the inductive charging. Now these three are the takeaway impacts and probably the challenges that need to be addressed. No proper solution right now exists, but we know that these are some things that can be solved. Control algorithms. You have autonomous steering, assisted steering, platooning, remote platooning, smart path mapping. What this means is that there is some amount of steering control that needs to be done. Why? See, when you're traveling on a highway, majority of the accidents happen due to driver fatigue. He will doze off. You are driving at a constant speed. The driver has a tendency to doze off, and that is when the accidents happen. So that is when assisted steering should automatically take control. So you sense the inactivity of the driver through IoT devices, and then the control mechanism should automatically hand over the control to the automatic mechanism. A lot of accidents can be avoided. So that is where the autonomous and assisted steering comes in. Platooning is another application where you have one driver and you have several lorries or trucks being dragged together, wireless, connectionless dragging together of these platoons, where they all autonomously follow a leader. So they follow a leader kind of approach. You also have applications like in the traffic signals where you have to stand two, three sessions of traffic cycles because of large traffic, kilometers level length of traffic. If platooning is done, as you start coming into the traffic signal zone, the traffic signal can take control automatically, and it will synchronously move the vehicle. It is not like one starts up the vehicle in C. By the time that wave comes to the 1 kilometer level traffic, already the next red signal would have come. So if the synchronous remote platooning happens, you will see that cars cross the traffic zones much more easily. So these are some of the topics there. I just wanted to mention that whenever you're talking about remote, people have a lot of sensors. A lot of sensors also lead to reliability issues. So vision should be your primary sensor to which license is given for the autonomous steering or assisted steering or platooning. And that vision should be used for generating the torque and the steering angle to control the traction drive and the steering control drive. So for this, driving license has to be provided. And over and above that, to map and go from destination A to B, route mapping, all those things, you can use other sensors. So driverless cabs, highway sleep assist, synchronous traffic movement, these are all the impacts that you will feel in the society immediately when these things come into play. These challenges are addressed. Then communication. So communication, as I said, again, very important, significant challenges there, both intra-vehicle communication and inter-vehicle communication. So power line can be used for intra-vehicle communication, which is coming up in a big way, and which can also monitor the health of the vehicle. In the inter-vehicle communication for collision avoidance and platooning, the headlights and the rear lights are used for communicating wirelessly in an optic way. That is also coming up in a big way to communicate between vehicles. So impact will be in the ECU, electronic control unit. You have the inter-vehicle distance and collision avoidance. These are impacts that you can see, and car, bus, and truck highway platooning. The communication plays a major role. Now, IoT systems, you have the smart windshield. This is something which is a innovative thing which can come make a big impact. See, especially night driving. When you're driving in the night, a car coming in the opposite, the glare of the headlights of the opposite car can really affect you. So that is where smart windshields become very useful, where it will remove the gray, it will do an image processing and remove the glares and present a much more pleasing picture to the driver. Tire pressure sensing, judging the distance, all these things will come when you're talking of in correlation with the autonomous steering or autonomous driving and onboard diagnostics. So these three can play a part: smart windshield, smart vision, onboard diagnostics for night drive glare problem impact, extending the human vision spectrum, and preventive and preemptive maintenance prompts for this onboard diagnostics. And storage is another important. I mentioned it at the beginning of this session where I said that eutectic combination of sources should be able to be connected to the multi-power port. And that is something that needs to be done if you want to make vehicles commercially viable. Anything should be able to be connected, any battery, any storage, whatever is available should be able to be connected. You can borrow it from another friend of another model make, should be able to connect to this vehicle, and then at least for emergency conditions, keep moving on. So HEV power assist, range extenders, multiple source, storage management. These are all a kind of research challenges that need to be solved. So if I take these yellow ones, they are mature. The red ones, you will see people have done, but still not in a big way in the commercial. And the blue ones, lot of challenges, open challenges to be solved. So you see that the electric vehicle as a discipline has a lot of challenges that needs to be solved. And probably in future, many of you people will be working on that. And I hope these things are resolved so that the ecosystem then can come onto the road. Just before leaving, I'll just show one video. I said I will show one video on. Okay, so this is the vehicle. You see this portion. This is the smart windshield. This portion here, the smart windshield. The other drive portion I explained to you before. The smart windshield is something that, as I said, will come. It is translucent. It can be opaque. It can become transparent, and you will see on that screen what is actually appearing in the front. So that is basically the effect. So you will see that what is appeared is passing through an image processor and appearing on the front screen here. And because it is passing through an image processor, you can manage with this glare effects and things like that. This is at a nascent stage where we have taken the LCD, 2 LCD screens and try to play around with it. But of course, this is something that can become a major role, especially in avoiding night accidents. Okay, we'll stop at this point. And I am open to questions. All from my side. I hope I have finished on time. Yeah, there is some 5 minutes where we can discuss anything that you want to discuss.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Yes.
Sir, regarding fast charging, does it mean only to increase the power rating of the converters?
Yes. It means to increase the power rating converters. Not only that, your battery should be capable of taking that high peak currents. See, the battery chemistry, they have a profile for the current. You can't give any current to charge the battery. Most of the chemistry will happen at a certain rate. So you will have to give the current at that rate. So just increasing the power rating of the battery itself is not sufficient. The chemistry also should be integrated such that it can accept that current.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, where we can focus our research area in electric vehicles, sir? Because you have listed so many areas.
Yes,
but
all the blue ones are research areas. You can pick your choice. The one where you have passion, you can do that.
Okay, sir, if I'm plan to take a research area is battery management system, so what I have to do means they are saying about artificial intelligence, neural network will place in that will play a major role in that.
Artificial intelligence, neural networks are all tools. They are tools to solve some problems. You can do it with artificial intelligence, you can do it without also. You can, depends upon how you view it. If I take adaptive control, is adaptive control artificial intelligence or is it just plain adaptive control? It is a name, right? So I can use adaptive control structures and call it as machine learning also. So these are tools, but what is it that you want to achieve? What is the performance that you want to achieve, and what is the power that you want to control? Those are the aspects that you need to worry about. You can use any algorithm for solving that problem. These are neural algorithms and artificial machine learning algorithms are there. You use a specific, as far as they are concerned, it's a filter. It's a digital filter. So which digital filter you want to use is depending upon the application, you can make a choice.
So what is latest algorithm they are using, sir? Because generally we are had about the genetic algorithm, so likewise. So can you say any specific algorithm which is
all the algorithms that we have used are very simple one. Most of the cases, very simple algorithms like low pass filters work nicely. Only the order of the filters can be changed. If you want to bring in some kind of an adaptive nature, why you need an adaptive nature is that the parameters of the machine can vary. As you are moving, as you are running the vehicle, the machine can heat it up. The temperature can rise. And as the temperature changes, the parameters of the machine can change. The parameters of the machine changes, then your control parameters have to be tuned. So this needs to be adapted. So this adaptive filtering, you could use machine learning or any other algorithm for that, or you just plain you can use Kalman filters, or Kalman filter is also a type of machine learning, or you can use least squares. Different optimal algorithms are you can work that out. They are there in the literature.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, good morning.
Yeah.
Sir, do high gain DC to DC converters or multi-level inverters play a role in these topologies, sir? Or we have to go for the conventional topologies?
No, you have lot of see, I told you that DC link today is we say E battery. Now E battery means, let us say I have super capacitors now, or the ultra capacitors. They are pretty phenomenal in terms of energy capacity, but they are very poor in terms of voltages. So you getting a super cap greater than 5 volts can be is still not happened. So you may have to use several of them in series, which means that you need to do a power electronic interface, or you use the super cap at that level and use a high gain converter to bring it to 700 volts or 800 volts, depending upon what your motor requirement is. So high gain converters are very much needed, very much necessary, and a lot of research work can be done with that. high gain converters coupled with charge equalization for this super caps can also be a nice area of work. All these are definitely this one. And the inverters driving the motors can be multi-level inverters. See, you can have high voltages, but I don't want to use high voltage devices. I can use low voltage devices like MOSFETs and IGBTs. MOSFETs, for example, because MOSFETs switch much faster than the IGBTs. So I will use the low voltage MOSFETs, but high current MOSFETs. Through multi-level inverters, I can get high voltage drive. So these are applications you will have to work on with.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. Sir, when we go for the wireless charging, so which control method would be best suited for that? Because in that case, we have to do the transmission to the receiver side. So which control we should adopt?
Which control you are saying?
Yeah.
See, in all charging mechanisms, see, wireless charging is basically a interface mechanism. Both wired charging and wireless charging, the charging current profile only you are controlling. And the charging current profile is dictated by the chemistry of the battery. So in the wireless charging, one element that you are adding is that you are bringing in galvanic isolation so that the power source can be elsewhere and the vehicle can be elsewhere. So the power source need not be physically connected to the electric vehicle. So even during motion or during parked condition, the vehicle is free, not connected to any power source, but inductively, wirelessly, it is getting charged. So there is only this galvanic isolation. Otherwise, the control is always the charge current profile.
Sir, any power quality issues associated since we are integrating with the grid?
Yes, I mentioned no. Power quality means grid itself can fail.
Yes, sir.
So it has such a significant and prominent effect on the grid that your grid can go into unstable mode. You will be overloading the grid, and then the grid will fall, and then once the grid falls, all these charging units will stop. Then again the grid will come back, and again the charging units will this will keep oscillating. So
okay.
you can have very large power quality issue. Power system designers and power system engineers will really have to work hard on the grid stability and those kind of issues.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
There will also be transition to other forms of grids, like it's not that sine wave is the king. Sine doesn't necessarily have to be the king. You can have DC microgrids. DC grids may also start coming in because majority of the loads are now DC, not sine. And HVDC is becoming more and more popular. So there can be changes in the nature and the type of the grid.
Okay,
What
sir.
you normally consider as power quality with respect to a sine wave may not be the one which will stay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay, then if there are no other questions, we can conclude at this point, and I will hand over control to our coordinator.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. There is a few questions into the chat box also, but some of the majority of the questions are covered. Only there is one question asked by the Kanthimati. Can I do research on electronic braking of EVs?
Yeah, in fact, EVs, electronic braking, what we call regenerative braking, is a natural process. You don't have most of the electric drives, electric regenerative braking is inbuilt into it. Research wise, if you see, not much you can do in the sense that as it is a very mature area, you will not be, okay, you can probably still try to find and fine tune the way.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you so much for your session, sir. Almost we have covered all the things that required to be given, and there are so many comments given by the participants also, as we cannot communicate with all the participants during the session. So they have given their concern into the chat box. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. We all know that we have always a busy schedule, so despite of that, also you have given us the concern and taken this session very nicely and very positively. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. Hope we will, yes, yes. So hope we will get in touch again and have some more discussion on the said topics for the required participants, sir.
Sure. Bye. Bye.
Yes, sure. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. And all the participants. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Bye bye, everybody. Have a nice lunch.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. You can leave, sir. Okay. So all the participants, now we have a lunch break as it is already 12 o'clock. We will share the feedback links with all the sessions as we have done yesterday. So we will have a next session on electric vehicles system by Dr. Mahendra Ghat. He is from industry person Siemens. So we will continue the session at the 12:45 p.m. Till that we will have a lunch break. We will join again at the 12:45 sharp. Thank you so much for being attended, very cooperative and sincere attendee. We will thank you so much. Now you all can leave one by one, and I will end the session. Thank you so much.